Jesus led the people of his day and leads us today to questions about the quality of our lives. Jesus said, "My Father gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is that which comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. I am the bread of life." First, let us recall some of the events of last week's gospel. Remember that people had been with Jesus for over 3 days as he taught them. They had exhausted the food they brought with them. They were hungry. Jesus saw their hunger and responded by taking 5 loaves and 2 fish and feeding 5,000 men. This miracle took place near the town of Tiberias, which is at the southwestern end of the Sea of Galilee, which is 13 miles long and 10 miles wide. It was during that night, after feeding them, that Jesus had gone up the mountain to pray. His disciples got in the boat and went from the area of Tiberias up near Capernaum at the northwestern end of the Sea of Galilee. And toward the end of their journey there, they saw Jesus walking on the water toward them. In today's gospel, we find Jesus in the synagogue in the town of Capernaum. He had been there previously. Jesus had worshiped in several of their synagogues in that area, and he is teaching them in the synagogue that day. It becomes kind of a dialogue between Jesus and some of those who had followed him from the day before that were there in the synagogue. Jesus reminds them of what had happened in the desert when God freed them from the slavery in Egypt. They had been there for some time, and the people were getting angry at Moses. Some of those present thought that it was Moses who provided them with the bread from heaven. And Jesus corrects their misunderstanding. God, not Moses, provided food for the people. God gave them bread from heaven to eat. And God did this for a purpose. He knew that soon he would enter into a covenant with this people and give them the 10 Commandments. But this was a test. When you see the bread from heaven, gather only enough for that day, no more. He wanted to see if they would obey. Some did, and some did not. When they first saw it, they wondered what it was. And in their language, they simply said, "Ma na," meaning, "What is it?" Which later they coined the phrase for that bread as manna. Some obeyed, some did not. Those who took too much found that their bread was filled with worms by the end of the day. A modern example of a test would be the speed limit. The legal speed is meant for the safety of all. Regardless of what the speed limit is, it seems that 95% plus of drivers today disobey and exceed the speed limit. I'm sure that all of you are faithful to the limit. Yesterday, as I came here, I always set my cruise on the speed limit. Where it was 70 miles an hour, I was passed by everyone. When it went to 75, they were going faster than that, even one close to 90. Are we kind of like our ancestors? Do we fudge a bit? Probably. Well, how are you doing with the 10 Commandments? Because that was just a test he gave them in the desert to see how faithful they would be. How faithful are we to the 10 Commandments, or do we fudge a bit, just like the speed limit? God sent those people manna, bread from heaven, but now he has sent his own Son from heaven. My Father gives you the true bread from heaven. And Jesus meant himself. Jesus offered them and offers us true bread. I am the living bread come down from heaven. In his dialogue in the synagogue and with us, he invites them and us to be nourished by his way of life. And first, he speaks to them metaphorically. What he wants of us is to model our lives on his. We are to become like him in the manner in which we live our lives. When we digest our food each day, it becomes a part of us physically. When we digest Jesus' teaching and enter an intimate personal relationship with him, it becomes our way of life. We learn to see as God sees and to live as Jesus, our God, invites us to live. In addition, Jesus spoke to them and to us sacramentally. Jesus gives us his flesh to eat and his blood to drink sacramentally. My flesh is real food, my blood is real drink. And we know that God is everywhere. And we know that Jesus is God. And in the Eucharist, Jesus becomes present to us in a special way, in the most intimate manner, as he shares his very self, the bread of life, with us. I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never hunger, and whoever believes in me will never thirst. The people in the synagogue asked that day, "Sir, give us this bread." And we respond and say to Jesus again today, "Lord Jesus, give us this bread always."